What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Mind of Marsal podcast. This is episode number 125. I am your host, Armando Marsal. You can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. Follow me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram and threads at Mind of Marsal, and now on TikTok at Mind of Marsal Pod. Before jumping into it, I just want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. I greatly appreciate you all. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, enjoying the content, enjoying the show, please make sure you follow, rate, review, like the podcast wherever it is you're consuming it. Also, you can now find this show on YouTube at the Mind of Marsal YouTube channel there. And remember, folks, if you have anything you want me to discuss on the podcast, any topics, any questions, fantasy related or not, email those to mindofmarsal@gmail.com and I'll make sure to answer those here on the podcast. It is Friday, and you know what time of the week it is. It is the time where me and Chris Rose get together and break down the week. Chris, how's it going, my brother?
Oh man, I'm heartbroken from that big loss last night that the Vikings took. They were, man, I don't even know what to say. They're dog shit right now.
Yeah, it was definitely quite the game there. A really bad performance from Minnesota. For those who don't know, and those who haven't caught on, Chris Rose is a big Vikings fan here. So he's speaking from the heart right now. He's hurt. He's hurt. I'm sure he watched the game. I'm sure you caught the game yesterday, Chris. Like you and I always talk a little bit about the Thursday night game or whatnot. I'll tell you this, they just look like flat, right? Like I guess that's the way I view it. They came out flat. The Chargers came out and they looked like the superior team yesterday. Played a good football game there. I think surprising that again they continue to lean on the pass, but we did see them implement the run a little bit more. And I think they were the first team to stick with the run against the Vikings, and it kind of showed that the Vikings can be run against, right? Like this is a team that it is a good defense. They're known for their pressure against quarterbacks, but they tend to have, vulnerabilities against the run. And I think we saw it firsthand yesterday with Vidal, running all over them, having a really good game there. Um, I think this is a team you could run against if teams stick to that. I think you can run against the Vikings, but I think they're a better team than they showed last night for sure, without question. I think we're going to see McCarthy under center as early as next week against Detroit. That's the initial reports right now. I think it's going to be obviously an upgrade at quarterback. Wentz did not look good yesterday. He has been doing a decent job, but at the end of the day, they got to get this young man going here, Chris. But overall, thoughts on Thursday night's game and then kind of the outlook, because you and I were talking a little bit before the show, and there's some crucial and critical games coming up here for Minnesota in the upcoming weeks.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that pick six to start the game. I think that was a big deflating factor and a deflating moment in that game where, I'm not saying they definitely win the game, but I do think that kind of changes kind of the play calling on the offensive side with KOC. Um, the offensive line is in shambles. I mean, they got Donovan Jackson back, the rookie guard at Ohio State, but still just so much pressure. Carson Wentz was getting hammered every time he went back. And I don't know how much you throw JJ McCarthy, I don't know how much he actually improves with how bad this offensive line has been. That being said, the cover two defense was absolutely throttled in the middle of the field. I mean, Aranda Gadsden was open how many times in the middle of the field? And then, of course, I've been saying this for many weeks when Gainwell rushed for over 100 yards in that Pittsburgh game, that this Minnesota defense, if you continue to run, they'll absolutely, like, they cannot stop the run. They bring so much pressure off the edges with Bernard, Dallas Turner. The only guy that really played well was Jalen Redmond, who's their nose tackle. Other than that, man, it was just absolute poor performance across the board. Could not cover anybody, could not do anything. And again, that pick six that they turned they turned the call over was completely deflating. It could have changed kind of the defense and like I said, how KOC would call the plays offensively, but also his play calling has been so conservative. You got fourth and one. Yeah, you're at your own 40, but you got fourth and one. I think you go for it there. Third and two, you run some dumbass like pass play. I think you still got to run the ball. They got to trust the running backs. You got Jordan Mason, man, who's I think is a better running back than Aaron Jones. You got to run in between the tackles. He only had three total yards and maybe four carries. Just awful play calling. I'm sure they'll get it switched around. I'm sure they'll get it fixed. I sure hope they do before December 7th because I'm flying up to Minnesota for that game. But like you said, they got a 5-game stretch in here where they have to win at least three of these games. Lions, Ravens, Bears, Packers, Seahawks in Seattle. I do think I see a, you know, I think they can win 4 out of these 5 games. I think the hardest game, maybe the Seahawks, to be honest with you, or even the Lions. But yeah, this is a tough stretch. They got to win 3 out of the next 5.
Yeah, it's an important stretch for them, right? Like it's really going to define, I think, their season in the next couple of weeks. And I'm not saying that, if they don't have a favorable turnout as far as if, if they lose a couple of these games, their season's completely over, but they definitely put themselves in a really tough position here, I think, if you ask me. I do want to take the bright side. Jordan Addison has looked good since he returned, man. He got in the end zone last night. He has now scored a touchdown in 2 of his last 3 games, 2 of the 4 games this season. I think that's a bright side there for you guys. You mentioned it. I think very important that offensive line. It's a big problem too, right? Like that is huge. If you can't protect your quarterback, you're not giving him enough time to get, go through the progressions, go get the plays. And maybe that's why we've seen the kind of play call, right? Because I think O'Connell understands right now the vulnerabilities in this offense and what that means, for what he wants to do. So hopefully, they get healthier and they get better there in that offensive line to really help this offense, Chris. I'll say this: Hawkinson managers, like in season long, I totally understand the frustrations. He's someone that if you want to part ways, I totally understand, Chris. What are you doing like with Hawkinson? Because I know I've got a lot of Hawkinson questions. Do you think this is going to be it for him? Like as far as this is what we are expecting moving forward? Are there better days ahead of him? What do you see his role moving forward here for the Vikings?
No, I still think that he's going to have a role. I think they've kind of phased out Adam Thielen a little bit. You don't really see him get a ton of targets in games where they're going to have to throw, especially in the middle of the field. I mean, he looks good. If you watch like the routes that he's running, he's not slow. It's just bad reads by this quarterbacking, whoever's behind center. So I think more so, I think it's going to be, like I said, the next 5 games are going to be tough. They're probably going to have to throw to win games. I would keep him. I would say keep him through like the Baltimore game, these next 2 games, and really see how it is. Again, revenge narrative going against the Lions. He plays well against the Lions, going back to Ford Field. So I would keep him until the Vikings get the Bears at home and see what he does. But I mean, they're phasing out some of these other wide receivers where I still think he's going to have opportunities.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I'm holding as well. I have him in my home league. I've been rolling him out each and every week. Obviously, there's been some bad performances. There's been some, decent performances. There hasn't been that blow up game that we're used to seeing from Hawkinson, those ceiling games. We haven't seen one of those yet. I agree with you, man. I was watching that game and he was open a few times. Wentz did not look in his direction.
Terrible
Like it
reads.
was
Yeah.
like it was one time. There was one time in the red zone too, like that. He you go in that direction, he likely gets in the end zone. It changes the entire outlook and dynamic, right? Like of what his fantasy managers are thinking of Hawkinson. So just keep that in mind. Hawkinson managers there, and then the other side, Gatson. Look, man, he's emerged as a real threat, a real weapon for this offense. I think he was obviously we recommended him as a high waiver wire priority. If you have Gatson now, I'm good with rolling him out each and every week. There's no need to roster 2 tight ends in fantasy leagues outside of tight end premium situations or leagues where you must start 2 tight ends. In most other leagues, it's 1 tight end. Gatson's someone I'd be comfortable rolling with the rest of the way. Am I expecting him to score a touchdown each and every week and just be a top 5 tight end? Probably not. But do I think between now and the end of the season he can turn into a top 12 or be that top 12 tight end for you in a 12-team league? Yes, I think so. So that's an every week starter in that kind of setting. So just wanted to point that out there, Chris. Um, let's dive into week 8. And you and I, we talk about the main slate. We once again have 10 games on the main slate here this week in the DFS. And as we do each and every week, we'll go position by position. But before we jump into it, we always like to give our overall thoughts on the slate. And I find this one to be a very fun slate, right? Like I feel that roster construction is very direct this week. And I think you're going to have to find 2 or 3 ways to get unique because there's a lot of good chalk. There's a lot of mispriced players, in my opinion, this week, which is odd, right? Because we're like mid season already, and I feel like there's a couple of players that are mispriced here due to maybe injuries on offense, due to lack of production. But What are your overall thoughts on this slate this upcoming week, Chris? Are you liking this one? Do you find it challenging? Where are you at?
Probably a bit challenging because I know I want to pay up at the running back position, so I was trying to find that value elsewhere. I think we can find some value at the quarterback position. If you read my article, there's a couple cheap guys that I really like who are in good spots. So I think if the two chalk guys at running back are obviously in smash spots. One of the guys I think is going to go absolutely berserk this week. Um, but it is finding like that those value wide receivers to kind of pair up that are in good spots where um, I don't think there's going to be a ton of chalk outside of the two running backs, the high price running backs. Um, so it's going to be an interesting slate. I think it's going to be a fun slate. I think it's definitely better than last week. I mean, last week I took a big L on that one, especially in my my core four, my quarterback and wide receiver who shit the bed. So hopefully it's a better week.
I'm sure it will be. I'm sure it will be. I did get through the cash line last week. I didn't have a big day by any means, but it was definitely in the green. You and I, by the way, for those who are tuning in, and I know this is a football podcast and we talk a lot of football stuff. We talk sports mainly, but mainly football that is. But NBA season started. We have a ton of coverage there over at fantasyguru.com. Make sure you're checking that out. I mean, it's been what, 3 days, 4 days. So far, there's been a lot of success there in the DFS side of things for the NBA. So make sure you're checking out our content there. Great group of guys, good content, good stuff in Discord as well. So strongly recommend it. But Chris, going back to the slate here that we have at hand, um, I agree with you. I think you can make a very strong case for all three of the top priced running backs this week, right? Like every single one of them is in pretty good spot. The usage is there. Like a lot of the boxes check off for me here with some of these guys. But I'll say this. I don't think you need to this week. I think with one, you just got to choose the right one. And I also think you got to get uncomfortable with the way your some of the correlation, right? Like I think I'm going to talk about this when we talk about the Atlanta, but and you can call me out on it, but I think if you play Bijan and Tyler Algier, you're already getting different, and I don't think that that's completely insane or bananas this week. I think if you play, Bijan with Drake London, those two by themselves, I don't think that's going to be a popular stack. Like I think that's going to be a way to get a little bit different with your build, right? Like I don't necessarily think you got to go insanely crazy as far as low ownership is concerned, but just doing pairing up players that you might not think are going to be paired up. Yeah, some people might play Drake London, others might play Bijan, but not many lineups might have Bijan and London in the same lineup. So things like that, I think, are a good way to get contrarian. I think there are a lot of quarterbacks this week in prime spots. I think you have to pick and choose your quarterback wisely because I think there's probably a handful of guys, if not a little bit more, that have 25 plus fantasy point upside this week in those kind of spots. And I think picking and choosing the right one is going to be critical this week in DFS because there's a lot of mispriced quarterbacks, in my opinion, this week. So that's kind of where I'm at with this week. I think it's going to be a balanced approach. I'm paying down the tight end. Defense has been a challenge, so I'm looking forward to when we get to that part of the podcast. Defense has been a challenge for me this week. Um, and then, like always, we'll go position by position. At the end of the show, we go with some of our survivor picks and then bets of the week here for us. So make sure you tune in all the way through the end of the podcast here, Chris. We kick it off at the quarterback position this week, like we do each and every week. And you mentioned it. You have your quarterback coach article up. Why don't you talk to me about the position? Who are you in? Who are you out on? And what matchup are you looking to exploit here this week?
Yeah, a guy that I should have had as my core four being Bo Nix. I mean, going into the fourth quarter, I think he had like three fantasy points and exploded for what 40 DK points. I should have had him as a core four. I have him as a core four this week. I just think it's an absolute smash spot. My number one quarterback in all of matchups. If you look at what's gone on in the last couple of weeks, Justin Fields torched this defense. Bryce Young torched this defense. Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, going all the way back to like week three, they've been absolutely torched. So Nix kind of fits the mold for me as my favorite one. Jalen Hurts, after getting back in the right side of passing last week, going against the Giants defense that hasn't been great. He did put up almost 22 DK points 2 weeks ago. So I like Jalen Hurts there. Another guy, I mean, like Caleb Williams, I know that we missed on him. I think it's another good spot against a Baltimore defense that hasn't been great against the pass. Um, I'm going to give a pass for last week. Just it was just wasn't great through the pass through the air, but I still think he's in a good spot. Um, I mean, the rookie that I'm going to take my L on, I mentioned this in my article, Jackson Dart. I mean, put up 24 DK points against the Giants 2 weeks ago. I just don't see. Just his ability to extend plays has been absolutely phenomenal, and I don't know how you're going to stop him. Four total touchdowns last week. They should have won the game. And then my other cheap guy, or my two cheap guys, if you will. One being Tyrod Taylor. I think it's just a really good spot for Tyrod Taylor. I know he doesn't have a ton of weapons, but I think Tyrod Taylor at a cheap price tag like that's interesting. Only 4,500. Don't know if the upside is there. He's more of that large field GPP option. And then the guy that's in just a smash spot here that's been great over the last 2 weeks, Joe Flacco, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions, over 300 passing yards last week. Um, just an interesting spot. If Gardner's probably going to try to lock on one of these guys, either T Higgins or Jamar Chase. More likely we get Jamar Chase. So I like Flacco here. Just too many weapons for him not to succeed in this spot.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more with you as far as Bo Nix, man. Like the Cowboys, they're likely going to be without Trevon Diggs this week. He's dealing with that concussion. They've given up the second most passing yards this season, a league high 16 passing touchdowns, 69% completion rate, the most fantasy points per game to the position. They're 27th in pass DVOA, 16th in pass rush. Like all the boxes check off, right? Like with Bo Nix. I think his price is very appealing as well. So for me, he's firmly in play. His play has been erratic this year, right? Like that is the concern with Knicks. But like when you have a matchup like this one here, at 6K, I think it's tough to pass up on. He's at home. Um, I like Knicks here. I'm not sure if I'm going to make him a core play because I'm probably going to wait until the last minute to make my quarterback decision here. I've been shuffling literally five different quarterbacks in and out of my lineup throughout the week. I couldn't agree more with you as far as Jalen Hurts is concerned as well, right? Like for me, this is a really good spot for him. I feel like he's underpriced. He's the cheapest he's been all season. Giants giving up 20 plus fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks this season. They've given up the fifth most passing yards. His rushing ability just gives him that nice solidified floor. There's a insane ceiling, right? We haven't seen the ceiling games all that much from him this season, but there's still an insane ceiling here from Jalen Hurts. You could pair him up with multiple of his pass catchers. You could play him naked. Like it doesn't really matter. Everyone, here for the Eagles, for the most part, these pass catchers are all relatively affordable. When you look at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, like all these guys are pretty affordable this week. So I think he's very stackable here. One quarterback that you did mention, I have like mixed feelings, like because you're gonna get two results here. You're gonna get a good result or a bad result. Like, and I know that sounds stupid, but Lamar Jackson to me sounds like looks so appealing in this matchup against the Bears. This game has a high total. He's returning from that hamstring injury. Like that is my concern, right? Like that hamstring injury. Like how effective of a runner is he going to be? Not necessarily that he has to be super effective because he's a really good passer and he can carve you up through the air, right? But how effective as a runner? That's that element of his game that provides that extra push, that extra ceiling. He's underpriced in my opinion at 6,800. I've noticed that he's gotten some steam throughout the week. Earlier in my process, it didn't look like he was going to be that popular, but I do think he's going to garner a little bit more ownership than I anticipated at the beginning of the week. But still think Lamar Jackson is a very interesting tournament play this week for me. Really like this spot for him, really. Daniel Jones is another one that I always talk about pretty much each and every week. Chris, you know that, I know that. I like him here quite a bit. The thing with me when it comes to Daniel Jones is how much is he going to have to throw against the Titans, right? Like how much is he going to have to do? I think if I'm going to get exposure to this passing game, it's going to be through a wide receiver, and we'll talk about that later on. But I did want to point that out because I do think Daniel Jones is an interesting play. Like I don't think many people are going to be on him, and he's been one of those quarterbacks that gives you that pretty stable floor as well as a pretty decent upside too at a very affordable price tag, in my opinion. You mentioned, Jackson Dart. Like, I mean, this kid is incredible. What he's capable of doing, I couldn't agree more with you. Like that rushing element of his game is so enticing every week. It doesn't really matter the matchup. He went and did it against Denver, dude. Like That's a tough fucking defense. Like at the end of the day, and the Eagles are no walk in the park, and he did it against them too. Um, I'm good with going Dart. He's probably not going to make my lineup this week unless I change my things dramatically. You mentioned Joe Flacco. I agree with you there. My cheap guy, man. I'm kind of interested in Spencer Rattler if you're really trying to get different this week. You look at this team, a game against the Bucks. They've given up the 10th most passing yards, a 68% completion rate, 11th most touchdown passes to the quarterback position, tied 18 plus fantasy points per game. My only concern, right, as I said this before, is I think there's a handful of guys that have that 25 plus, 30 plus fantasy point upside. Rattler's not one of those guys for me, right? And if I think you're going to probably need one of those guys. So it really depends on what you do with the rest of your lineup. Like you're going to have to really increase the ceiling, increase the upside of that lineup that much more, not get yourself a floor play. I think to make this move work. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I view Rattler, right? Because if you're going to have to chase those 30 plus, 25 plus point performances that are going to happen this week inevitably, in my opinion, Chris. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love Spencer Rattler. I mean, he's been great this year, but the upside is just worries me. I think he's more like it's as weird as it say. He's more like that cash game, like 15 point, like baseline with not a ton of upside. I like the Daniel Jones call. I mean, the only problem is how good this running game is. With that's the one that takes me off Daniel Jones. Um, there's not a ton I really love at the quarterback position, other than like the couple of guys you mentioned. Lamar Jackson. Um, I think the running, if how much he's actually going to run, is going to be the key factor for me. If they're going to limit his running, probably going to be off him. But if he's full go, I get the play at 6,800. Other than that, not a ton. I'm really real interested in.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it's a very concentrated week, right? Like, and for those thinking Josh Allen, this is my issue with Josh Allen. Like, are they really gonna have to unleash him against the Panthers? Like, I don't think so. Like, can
No.
he go offshore? But we've kind of seen them play down to their opponents this year, right? Like, we've seen Buffalo kind of play down to their opponents and really only let him lose when needed, right? So, um. I, I'm not going there. I'm not going to talk anyone out of it. I'm just not going there. Like a 25, 26 fantasy point game from Josh Allen at 7,500. I don't think that's going to win you a tournament, right? So that's kind of where I'm at with him. And I think that's a very feasible outcome for him. So I'm out on him right there. All right, we talked about running backs here, and we talked about how much we like some of these high price guys. The top three guys are Bijan Robinson, 8,800, Christian Caffrey, 9K, Jonathan Taylor, 9,500. Chris, of the three, do you have any strong preference? If so, who is it, and how much are you prioritizing him?
I mean, Bijan's got to be the guy, right? Just based on price tag, upside. The Dolphins haven't stopped anybody. The last three games, Judkins, who was our smash play of the week, 3 touchdowns. Vidal, who put up 26 fantasy points. Rico Dowdle put up 36. James Cook before that, 24. I think this is just a smash spot here. I don't know. I really don't know how you don't play and just lock in Bijan here in this spot. I know he's going to be popular, but this again is going to be that 35% projected ownership play that you almost have to play here. Miami has been just so bad against the run. $700 difference off of Jonathan Taylor, who again in a really good spot. He smashed his team earlier in the year with 3 touchdowns. He smashed him in Week 16 last year with 3 touchdowns. Could he do it again? Absolutely, especially at home. So that's why I'm saying it's difficult. I want to play both guys. I just got to find some value, man. The difficult part is finding the value, and that's why I have a couple of those cheap quarterbacks in my article where it gives you a little bit of leverage to kind of play some of the guys and the cheaper wide receivers to kind of pair with them as well. So I don't know how you don't play either one of these guys. What's great is if you want to play Christian McCaffrey against Houston in a really good spot, you get him at like 2% ownership.
Well, that's where Spencer Rattler comes into play, bro. That's exactly where it comes into play.
Yeah.
Look, I couldn't agree more with you when it comes to, the outlook of the running back position. For me, it's very difficult to fade Bijan Robinson this week. We've been targeting Miami's defense now for the last, 3, 4 weeks, and it's
Yeah.
paid off. Bijan Robinson facing this Miami defense. They've given up the most rushing yards to opposing running backs, 5.2 yards per carry, 25 plus fantasy points per game. They're also top 10 in both receptions and receiving yards allowed to the position. Six total touchdowns, 25th in rush DVOA, 24th in rush defense. I mean, Bijan Robinson is one of the best, if not the best, running backs in football right now. Like, he's gonna have himself a field day, in my opinion, against his defense. Like, the only thing stopping him is they blow him out and they reduce his touches. Like, and he wasn't part of the blowout. They did it through the air. Like, that's, I mean, they cannot stop anyone. Like, no way in hell they stop Bijan Robinson this week. Like, and this is why I said before, like, I know it sounds crazy, but if you're trying to get contrarian, if you're trying to get unique, like, I don't think Algier is a terrible play. Like at 4,800, like you gotta monitor his status too because he's dealing with an injury there. But when you look at Algier and what he's done this season, like he's had a touchdown in three of the six games he's played. He has at least 10 rush attempts in all but two games this season. Like that's all he might need against Miami. Like so for me, like yes, it's a GPP only approach. I normally would not do that, but this is a game where they're 7.5 point favorites at home. They play much better at home. This is a good defensive unit. They don't have to necessarily have to throw it around unless Miami keeps it really close here. I could see them leaning on both of these running backs, and we've seen them do it before. So, what are your thoughts on playing both of these running backs? I know it's outlandish. I know it's not something that we normally recommend, but I think if there's a time, this would be it.
Wild as shit, but I get it. I mean, it's a great GPP play. The only problem is I don't think Algier has got how many opportunities has he had this year? It's not been hasn't been a ton, right?
Well, so he's had all right. So in week one he had 10 rush attempts. In week two he had 17 opportunities. In week three he had three opportunities. In week four he had 16 opportunities. In week six, 11 opportunities. Last week in a game where they were losing against San Francisco, he had a total of four opportunities. So game script dependent, right? But look, in when they won against Buffalo, a game that they were winning, he had 12 opportunities. When they won against Washington, he had 17 opportunities. When they won against Minnesota, he had 17 opportunities. Like when they're winning, he's involved. Like I feel like this is one of those games where they could be winning by a touchdown or more for if not the entirety of the game, like most of the game, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of a trend. Like for me, it's one of those trends. Again, I only do one lineup. I don't know if I'm going to necessarily end up there, right? But I did want to point that out because I do think it's very viable this week. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor. Look, Tennessee, they've given up the third most rushing yards, 4.6 yards per carry, a league high 10 rushing touchdowns. They're giving up 24 plus fantasy points per game, 28th in rush DVOA. Over his last two meetings, he's had over 100 yards in each game. In fact, he's had 320 yards and six touchdowns in his last two meetings. That's combined against his Titans defense. I think if you can find a way to get both of them in, I think it makes sense. But you do need him to go for 30 plus, and you need Bijan Robinson to go for 30 plus in order for this to work out, in my opinion. And it's very feasible in these matchups. So you definitely need seeding games for both of them here, and they're both in positions to do so. Christian McCaffrey, are you in or are you out?
Probably out. Um, yeah, probably be out.
I'm okay with him, though he is probably my third favorite of the trio, right? And there's just absolutely no way in hell you could fit all three. Like that's just there's no way that you could do it without completely punting. Um, I don't know if I'm gonna get to two of them, but I'm going to try. Outside of that, is there any running back here in that 7 to 8K range that you like? Saquon Barkley, 7,600, Devon Achane, 7,300. Then you drop down to like Javonte Williams, 6,800, James Cook, 67, Cam Scadaboo, 66, Judkins, 65. Anyone in that range that you're looking at here?
James Cook is the only other guy that I'm really looking at. 6,700. Um, he's had two bad games where I think everyone's going to be off him, but look at what he's done in the four games before that. 17 opportunities against Atlanta in a tough loss, back-to-back games where they've lost. I think this is a way that they get back and dominant force, and I think James Cook is going to be a low-owned smash player.
Yeah, I love that call. I think James Cook, like if you can't fit two of the high price guys, he's kind of that guy I'm leaning towards as well. If you're trying to pay up, I think he's a very sharp play. The opportunities have been there. It hasn't been lack of opportunities over the last few games. And last game I think he had what 84 rushing yards. I could pull it up, but yeah, he had 84 rushing yards or 87. I'm sorry, he averaged 5.1 yards per carry, but it was a game where they were losing. So like he didn't get in the end zone either, and that's another thing for him. Um, Carolina's run defense has been better. I will say that this season, but you're still going to get upwards of 16 opportunities in a game where you're expected to be playing with a lead here. I like Cook. I think he's, affordable here. First time under 7K since week three. So I think you're getting a nice discount. And in addition to his previous two poor performances, he's also coming off a bye, right? And people tend to forget players coming off a bye week. So I like this spot for him here as well. No interest in Saquon, right? Like I think he's GPP-ish, but if there's a week he could go off, it's this one, man. But I'm not going there this week.
No, neither. There's something looks off with him.
Yeah. Outside of that, though, in that range, I'm not in on a lot. I will say this between that 55 to 65 range, I think there's several appealing options here. I'm going to give my thoughts on one here, Derrick Henry at 6K. Here's another player like James Cook, right, where he's had some bad performances coming off a bye week.
Bro,
I think
6K is fucking stupid.
like exactly, like dude, and I actually think, look, with Jackson back, this is going to help Derrick Henry. The defense is getting a little bit healthier too, right? Like this is a must-win game for Baltimore. Like they've had a week to they've had 2 weeks, not a week. They had an entire week off. They've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Like I think this is a smash spot for Derrick Henry. And where do you have him as far as ownership is concerned? Because I don't have him that popular. Um,
I
I,
have No, I have him under 10%. Here's the thing though with Derrick Henry. If Lamar Jackson plays, I think it's actually a bump to Lamar to Derrick Henry, especially with Lamar coming off that hamstring. They're probably not going to run him. There is no negative correlation here. Now, if Lamar was healthy, 100%, I get the negative correlation. He's probably gonna take some stuff from him. But I think it's 6K. I don't know how you don't lock this motherfucker in. He's gonna go off. He had a good game last week too, which is insane to me. And they dropped his price over 100 yards on 26 opportunities. Like against a good defense too.
dude, I'm telling you, dude, I like it. And when you look at the Bears defense, like it's not like they're like a juggernaut defense. They're giving up 110.8 rushing yards per game to the opposing running backs, 5.3 yards per carry. I think Derrick Henry's going to eat this week, dude. And at
They're bad
6K,
on the road too. They're awful on the road against the run.
yeah, dude, I'm telling you, at 6K, I think slightly. I don't expect high ownership, and not slightly. I think he is massively underpriced in my opinion. So I think at point per dollar, he makes a ton of sense for me here this week. Um, Look, Chase Brown, I think is an interesting spot here against the Jets. His price tag is very appealing. Brees Hall, the other side, I also think is very appealing here this week. Chris, any interest in any of these two guys?
Um, wait, who said it? What was it? It
Brees
was
Hall
three
and
again.
Chase Brown.
So here's the thing. So this is what we touch on. Brees Hall, he's going to be popular. I think
Yeah.
Brees Hall is going to be really popular. Take the pivot off of Brees Hall, go to Derrick Henry. Cheaper price, take that one.
Yeah. I'm gonna say one more guy in this range that I like a lot. It's in that same game actually. DeAndre Swift, I think he's
Yes.
still very affordable. Baltimore giving up the sixth most rushing yards per game to the running back position, the second most fantasy points per game. They've given up seven rushing touchdowns, which is tied for fifth most. Keep in mind, this team already had a bye week. They're 31st in rush defense per PFF. They're 26th in rush DVOA. DeAndre Swift has seen a ton of volume, producing very good. This offensive line is playing very good. I don't think the game environment or game script, whatever, is going to impact them at all. Like, I think if they're chasing points, he's going to be involved. He's catching passes in the backfield. We've seen it before. If they're playing with a lead, he's going to run in between the tackles. I think he's matchup, as far as game script is concerned. I think he's matchup proof when it comes to the game script situation. And you look at his price tag, 5,900 on DraftKings, still underpriced in my opinion. he should be closer to that 65, 6,600. I think if you look, if you cannot go with that two running, like huge running backs, like I think going with one of the two, Derrick Henry and Swift, is very, very feasible here this week. Chris, any thoughts on Swift?
Yeah, I love him in the spot. He's been fantastic, man, and he's going like so under the radar too. Over 100 yards in back-to-back games, get a ton of opportunities too. Over 20 last week. I mean, it's really good spot against the defense that has been absolutely torched, giving up over 32 fantasy points per game at home to the running back position. Love the spot for him.
Yeah, I wish we could target Buffalo's run defense this week, but we just simply can't. We saw
Yeah.
firsthand, right? We talked about it like it was going to be a full-blown committee. That's precisely what it was here in Carolina. I expect nothing less this week. There, I'm not going too much lower. Like for me, I'm staying at that Swift range. I mentioned Chase Brown is someone that I don't mind at 5,400. I think the volume's going to be there. If you're trying to avoid the passing game from Cincinnati, you can do that, especially if you think that they're going to be playing with a lead here and maybe they lean on Brown a little bit more. But the Jets' run defense has been solid. This is just not a good defense whatsoever here right now. Anyone else here? And I mentioned, oh, Tyler Algier. If you're going to do that, it's the double. It's kind of the double tap type thing where you're doing Bijan and Tyler Algier, and then whatever the case may be. But again, GPP only for me. I will mention one more guy, Chris, Rashad White. He's been getting the volume there for Tampa Bay. I think someone that with Bucky Irving out again can continue to see volume. Pretty decent matchup against the New Orleans Saints. Someone that I think is going to go under the radar this week. So don't mind him if you're trying to go off the grid here and trying to get very contrarian here at the running back position. Any thoughts on him at 6,400 as a volume play?
Yeah, I think he's in play definitely. I think he'll be popular, but definitely in play. I think he's in, I, if I think he'll have the second highest ownership behind Bijan.
You really so wait, you think Rashad White's going to be the second highest owned running back this week
Yeah,
behind Bijan?
yeah,
Wow. I did not have that at all. I thought I have Brees Hall as the second highest.
yeah. I have. It's the Saints are 21st as far as fantasy points per game against RB1s. Yeah, the Bengals are 29th, but again, you have Tyrod Taylor behind center. So I just think the matchup plays better, especially when you lose, Mike Evans last week. I think it's more plays uh into the Rashad White side.
I'm interested to see where you have Devon Achane ownership because I have him top five
7.
ownership. Really? I have him top five, and there's two different projections that I've used, and they both have him pretty chalky. And I found that to be super intriguing and super confusing at the same damn time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know why he would be chalk. Any other running backs you want to talk about here, Chris?
No.
All right,
Chase
let's ju
Brown.
Chase. Yeah, Chase Brown. I mentioned him. We both think that he's fine, like a volume guy, right? Like I think it's a low. Like I think he's a leverage play if you're avoiding the some of the chalky guys in that range. Like because I don't
Yeah.
think Chase Brown's gonna be all that popular. So
No.
if you're looking to fade some of the chalk in that range, I think he's a good leverage play. All right, let's look at the receivers here, Chris, and all the way at the top, Jamar Chase. I mean, talk about looking like Jamar Chase, baby. Finally, some massive performances now. Coming off 16 receptions, 161 yards, a touchdown. He had 23 targets. He has at least 10 targets in each of his last three games. In that span, he has 45 targets in his last fucking three games, dude. That is 15 targets per game if my math is correct, Chris. Facing off against the Jets that will not have Sauce Gardner this week. He is out. Boy,
I
like,
saw you. I saw you just post that as we were
like,
on this. Yeah, I saw that.
boy, talk about. I'm sure he's like going like this. Like, I still can't find if anyone knows, if everyone was watching this and they know what the gift meme, whatever of that like dude that's going like that. I keep trying to, I can't find it, but I'm sure that's what Jamar Chase is doing right now, Chris. I know he's expensive. And I know we want to pay up at the running back position, but are you going to try to pay up for Jamar Chase this week in this matchup against the Jets?
I think you have to here. I mean, he's one of the core plays for me at 8,100. Still underpriced, massive upside. Losing this defense losing Sauce Gardner, it's just I don't know how that anyone's going to cover him here. Mentioned I love Joe Flacco. I think you could play Bijan, Henry, Jamar Chase together, and even mix it in with Bo Nix, which is crazy.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like I think there's different ways to get you creative there like that.
Yep.
Um Outside of Chase, are you looking to pay up at anyone? Like where's your drop off outside of Chase? So for those listening, so we got Chase at 8,100, CD Lamb 7,800, Nico Collins looking on the wrong side of questionable at 7,200. Then we got George Pickens 7,100, then Igbuka at 7K. Are
Yep.
you paying up for any of other of these guys? Is any of these guys like in your player pool this weekend?
No, I unfortunately have to go cheap this week, so none of these guys are going to be. They're in my player pool. If I don't pay up for the running back position, probably not going to get there with the guy I'm just going to is Jamar Chase.
The only other guy that's appealing to me in this range, anyways, is like Buka at 7K. Um, Given the obvious injuries to Tampa Bay, I don't know if I'm going to get there myself to this week because of roster construction. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get the Chase, if we're being honest. If I don't, I'm probably going to have one of Chase Brown or T Higgins in my lineup. Because I do think that this is a really good spot for this offense this weekend here against the Jets. The one player that like really stands out to me this week is Drake London against Miami, man. Like Drake London continues to be a beast for Atlanta. I think he's underpriced at 6,400. Like, and yes, there are concerns like you're gonna play Bijan and Drake London. I think it's very viable. You look at over the last three games, Bijan has been incredible, and in two of those games, Drake London has scored at least 28 DK points. Like, he's someone that it doesn't mean they don't have to throw a lot. He's still seeing the majority of the opportunities there. He has at least 10 targets in three straight games, has no less than eight targets in all but one game this season. I think there's a solidified floor. I think there's an insane ceiling. And again, like I think when you look at correlation, they don't correlate positively together, right? Like Bijan and Drake London. So most people will not roster both of them. I think you can. I think that's going to create a unique build, and I think you can still win a tournament this week because I think you could get 25 fantasy points from Drake London and still get 30 plus from Bijan. I think there's a clear path to that. And if you're wondering, do you have to run it back with someone? Not necessarily, in my opinion, Chris. Do you like Drake London this week?
I think it's an interesting play off of Bijan. I don't necessarily love the spot because I do want to play Bijan, but again, at his price tag with the opportunities, he's had a shit ton. 36 over the last 3 weeks. The volume is there. If you want to fade Bijan and for some reason the passing game goes off and they go up so much that it's Algier in the second half, I'm fine there.
Yeah, you could definitely I'm not fading
You can
Bijan,
be
Chris.
different.
I'm not fading Bijan. I rather be different with Drake London and Bijan in my lineup than fading Bijan.
Yeah.
I feel like fading Bijan is just going to be an unpleasant thing. Like right, like you're going to be sweating all one from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. You're just going to be stressed out for no fucking reason.
Yeah.
You mentioned you gotta go mid range here, so talk to me about some of the guys between that $5,500 range and $6,500 range that you're looking at this week, Chris.
From the 55 to 65 range, Cortland Sutton, of course, stands out. No Trayvon Diggs, so he stands out as kind of mixing with Bo Nix. I think AJ Brown, he's questionable with that hamstring issue, but he just looked good last week, just getting free with those two touchdowns. And then you got guys that are like questionable right now. We got to see if they practice. They Diggs, Olave, Waddle. Those are three guys that I would probably get to because we do have to find some value here. Other than that, there's not a ton of guys that I like. I don't love the matchup for Ted McMillan. I think with Michael Pittman, I think the game's going to be on the ground there. The one guy I wish would just freaking practice, Ricky Pearsall. And if he could just practice and get on this game on the field for this game, I think he's in a smash spot. But I highly doubt that. Highly doubt that he plays.
Yeah, so I'm torn, man. I love Cortland Sutton this week. Like I think he's a strong player. You look at the Cowboys; they've allowed the fourth most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers, a league high 12 receiving touchdowns, 71% catch rate. They're top two in fantasy points allowed per game on both FanDuel and DraftKings to the position. Third in fantasy points per game allowed to outside wide receivers. They're 27th in pass DVOA, 25th in coverage against receivers, 31st in DVOA against opposing receivers. One, like checking off most of the boxes. But I'm also intrigued by Troy Franklin as a value play in that same offense. Like for me, like you look at Franklin, he's very involved in this passing game as well. He leads the team in red zone targets. So like, and he's what 2K cheaper. So like that's kind of the where I'm at this week. I do like Cortland Sutton a lot. In that range, I think there's a couple of interesting pieces, like you mentioned. I think AJ Brown is in a really good spot. I mentioned that before when I was talking to about Jalen Hurts. Like I think AJ Brown is too cheap at 6,100. The volume has been there. I know the production has been erratic throughout the season, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the ceiling isn't there, right? Like we've seen some pretty big games out of him. Yes, we've seen a pretty low floor as well. You look at the practice reports just that that came out for today. Like he's cleared, so he's good to go. Again, you have to be. This is a GPP only play for me. I don't really trust it in cash games, but I think a GPP 6,100, the ceiling is pretty significant here for AJ Brown. Chris Olave, you mentioned. I like him here, especially if you decide to take the plunge with someone like Rattler or Olave, demanding a high target share there. Someone who gives you a relatively safe floor. I think he's underpriced. Zay Flowers to me is a very interesting tournament play. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on Flowers. I think if you go with like full rogue and you go with like Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers, I think that's very viable here this week. I don't think that many people are going to be on that trio. And I think that
What do you
they're
have his
all
ownership at?
who Flowers.
Yeah,
Um,
because you want to know what's crazy?
you probably have him chalked, don't you?
I have him as the highest owned wide receiver on the slate.
No, I have him at 12 at this moment.
12. If he comes in at 12%, I'm there.
I'll look at the update over the weekend though. Like I feel like because here's the thing, like if Lamar Jackson starts gaining buzz, like right, like as the weekend continues and his reports are better and better and better and better and better and better, like I feel like he's gonna get steam. He already got steam from Monday till Friday when we're recording, right?
Yeah.
So like I think Zay Flowers could get some steam. I do think though that 5,400 is way too fucking cheap for him on draft. I feel like DraftKings dropped the ball on the Ravens offense this weekend. Like I really do. Like it's hard not to go fucking full blown Ravens. It really isn't. The problem is like you want to run it back with Odunze. Like I I probably want to run it back with Swift.
Yeah, that's
Like
me. Yep.
right? Like that's what I would do. Um but you can also run it back with Odunze too. Like I'm okay with it. Problem is that I just like so many receivers in that range. I know you're not big tech McMillan. I actually think this is a really good matchup for McMillan. I think it's a good like run back if you play James Cook. I think McMillan is underpriced. Like the targets are going to go there. They have Dalton under center this week. I think that's going to be helpful for them. So yeah, I think he's fine. Like so, there are a lot of guys in this range, and you mentioned Michael Pittman like in the bad game script, and I agree with you 100%, man. But I feel like in tournaments, Michael Pittman is such a strong play. I say this, I feel like I'm like a broken record like every week with Michael Pittman. I recommend him, and it's a good matchup. Tennessee has allowed the ninth most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers, a league high 75% catch rate, 27 plus fantasy points per game to the position. Seventh most fantasy points per game to outside receivers. They're 30th in DVOA against wide receiver one, 18th in coverage against opposing wide receivers. When you look at the last four games against the Titans, he scored in three of those games, including earlier this season where he caught six passes for 73 yards and a touchdown. Like he doesn't need 8 to 12 targets, I think, to return value here at his price tag. I think if you give 5 to 7, targets, and he has a high percentage, catch rate there against his team, and he finds the pay dirt, I think he returns value. If you're not playing Jonathan Taylor, I feel like he's such a good leverage play, right? Because like you're hoping that Jonathan Taylor doesn't pop off. This team is expected to win. How are they going to win? It's going to have to be through the air. Pittman would be that guy if you're fading Jonathan Taylor. That makes a lot of sense to me, Chris. So I think it's a very fruitful position. Cortland Sutton, Michael Pittman, the two guys I'm prioritizing. Zay Flowers is like right there with them. So kind of where I'm at the reach position. And I also think if you don't want to fade the passing game and you can't get to Chase, T. Higgins is fine. Again, he's not nowhere near the priority level of some of these other guys in that price range, but he's also fine here, Chris. Um, what are you looking at value wise this week?
Yeah, obviously it's Tez Johnson for the Buccaneers. Just obvious, just his emergence over the last couple weeks. Three straight games with double digit points, 4,300, just a decent spot. Going to be popular, but for good reason. I think Rashid Shaheed at 4,700, always in play just based on his upside and deep threat. I think Alec Pierce. I know we don't love. I mentioned I don't love the passing game here for the Colts, but man, 10 targets last week with Josh Downs being out. I like that spot. Then you mentioned him, Troy Franklin, the red zone target for the Denver Broncos. Probably someone I can get there. There's one guy that I'm hoping gets activated, and that's receiver for the Titans. I can't think of his name now from Miami. I don't think he's going to get activated, but I would love to see him and his rapport with Cam. Just what the hell is his name? I can't think of his name now.
You're thinking about Restrepo?
Wow, yeah, Xavier Restrepo. I would love to see them activate him and him playing this game.
Yeah, well, you have to keep on if you're going in the direction, make sure you're keeping eye on news. And this is a 425 game. I will say this: I like Troy Franklin. I mentioned him. I like Shaheed as well as a cheap option there against the Bucks. I think Alec Ayomaner's also in play here at 3,900. He's someone that kind
Mhm.
of usually grades out as a decent value play for me this week. Um, Jalen Noel, man, San Francisco giving up the 11th most fantasy points per game to opposing slot receivers. Jalen Noel filling in for the injured Kirk there in Houston. A team that has no offensive line, so Stroud has to get the ball out of his hands quickly. We're going to talk about the tight end position. We're going to talk about Schultz in a minute, but I think Jalen Noel kind of grades out well for me because of that at very cheap price tag. And then if Nico Collins is out and you want to roll the dice on the other side and the rookie Jaden Higgins, sure.
I love
Um,
Jaden Higgins this week.
yeah. So I feel like you could go there for value. You mentioned Tez. I think that's going to be a popular pick this week as well as for value. I think you can also strongly consider Sterling Shepard here, in addition to Tez for value as well. So definitely a lot of value options at the wide receiver position this weekend. So keep an eye on news there. Calvin Ridley news is important there too. We saw. I mean, I don't know if you want to go Shamir DK, but look, he scored a touchdown last week, dude. And someone that does have a high target share in the red zone there for the Titans. Anyone else here that you want to talk about before moving on to the tight end position, Chris?
You mentioned Jaden Higgins. I would also mention Jalen Noel at 7 targets last week. He's more of that. I think he's going to end up getting more of the targets. So keep an eye on the Texans injury report. I'm looking at it right now just to see what's going on. Noel stepped in for Christian Kirk last week and was phenomenal. Kirk's
Yeah,
probably going to be out. Kirk's going to be out again, I think.
yeah, it's not looking promising. And like I mentioned before, like San Francisco giving up the 11th most fantasy points per game to slot receivers, right? Like so, like with Stroud having to get that ball out of his hands quickly, gonna lean on Noel quite often, I think there. So, um, I'm with you on that one as well, Chris. All right, let's look at the tight end position here, and we got Jake Ferguson all the way at the top at 6K. Then you got Tyler Warren at 5,500. Then the next guy is George Kittle at 4,500. So obviously a significant drop off there between the top two tight ends and the next guys. All right, first and foremost, are you paying up for Jake Ferguson or Tyler Warren this weekend?
No, Mal Ferguson now with CD back. I know he had a big game last week, 2 touchdowns, but probably not going to get there at 6K. Just too expensive. We got to save money. Got to save money somewhere, and we're going to save it here at the tight end position. There's one guy that I'm probably going to go all in on under 3,500, just to save some money. I'm probably not going to go anywhere from you know Ferguson. The only guy I like here is Dallas Goddard. At 4,200, but still, I probably won't get there.
Yeah, so for me, I think I know who you're talking about, and I love that call, and I agree with you. There's only two guys for me that I would it be interested in paying in upwards of 4K. Dallas Goddard being one of them. It's very difficult to ignore. his role in this offense, his production this season. He had a really good game against the Giants last time out. We talked about pairing up Jalen Hurts with someone. This is a really cheap way to, get a Philadelphia Eagles stack. So that's why, in my opinion, he's very appealing. I also like Dalton Kincaid. Like, you have to monitor his stats. I expect him to play. He has a touchdown in 3 of his 5 games this season. When you look at Carolina, they're dead last in DVOA against opposing tight ends. They've given up the fourth most receiving yards, 80% catch rate, 4 touchdowns, top 5 in fantasy points per game allowed to the position. I think a very good way to get exposure to the Bills this weekend without having to overpay or pay too much for anyone. And the matchup checks off. Like, so for me, Kincaid is very appealing at 4,300. Don't expect him to garner a ton of ownership here, Chris. So those would be the two guys I'm paying upwards of 4K for this week. I'm going to safely assume that your guy is Cade Otton at 3,400. Is that who you were referring to at the sub 3,500 tight end that you're paying for this week?
Yeah, 3,400. The guy that you know is going to get a decent target share coming off 8 targets last week, 6 the week before. You can make a case for a guy that's questionable right now that I'm assuming is going to play. That's Dalton Schultz. 15 targets over the last 2 games, going to be highly involved in the passing game. Those are the two guys I'm looking at. Like I said, 3,300 for Schultz, 3,500 for Cade Otton. I'm fine with playing Schultz and either Jalen Noel and Higgins together. So much value there. Guys are pretty much stepping in as wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, if you will, if you want to make it that way. So those are the two guys I'm locking in. And you know me, I've been locked in on tight ends, not deviating off that for the last 3 weeks. It's going to continue this week, especially with the price tag on these guys.
How about if I blow your mind right now and say, why not play Otton and Schultz in the same lineup instead of punting the receiver and going with where you think the targets are going to go? And then you get yourself two pretty safe floor guys and you're occupying 2 spaces with 7K only. You can now pay up at the running back position and at wide receiver if you wanted to, really. What do you think about that this week? And I'm not a two tight end guy. You know that. I think
Yeah.
you've said it I think you maybe have said it once this season, but I'm not a two tight end guy. I do think that you can make a strong case this week to get different.
So I'll tell you when I would do that. If I'm playing Jamar Chase and then I'm playing Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton together. So if I'm playing those 3 guys together and prioritizing Nix over a Joe Flacco and getting Sutton to pair with Nix, then I would go those 2 guys. Now, if I'm going Flacco or I'm just going one off with Jamar Chase and paying down at just say Spencer Rattler for this case, then I probably wouldn't do that because I'm getting enough value at the quarterback position at a cheaper price.
Would you do it if you had to go with Franklin instead of Sutton with your build?
I like the safer floor. So on higher dollar, I would go Sutton. Cash games higher dollar. I would go Sutton, but if you want that GPP floor, the red zone targets, then you go Sutton. Then you go Franklin.
I like that. I like that right there. It's good to have these conversations, right? Like
Yeah.
this is spitballing ideas here, guys.
It's a
So
different build. It's a different build you're not going to see. We really haven't seen 2 tight ends. Now I will tell you 2 weeks ago that 2 tight ends won the million maker. So it has been done where they've won $1 million off 2 tight ends. And you have 2 guys that are filling in. You have a tight end at 3,300, Dalton Schultz, who has the 20-point upside. And then you have another one who we saw last year in 3 games last year when the wide receivers were out. It was a 3-game stretch against Baltimore, Atlanta, and KC, where Cade Otton was the #1 target, where he saw 10 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets, and put up 21, 29, and 22. Now tell me a wide receiver, and you make a very, very good case here. And I was hoping you were going to go here. You have a tight end at 3,400, 3,300, 2 guys. With that much upside, you're not going to find that at the wide receiver position. The wide receiver position sucks this week. I'll tell you, other than like 4 guys, it sucks.
and isn't it a tight end appreciation week, by the way? I have to double check.
Oh
Is this
shit!
the fourth Sunday coming up? Like I'm gonna look at my calendar as we speak here. But I'm looking and I'm gonna talk at the same time. So I'll tell you this, Chris. So look, it's the fourth Sunday of the month, ladies and gentlemen, which means guess what? It's tight end appreciation week. So if there's a fucking week to go with two tight ends, it's this week. All right. I agree with you. Look, K. Otten has seen like his role increases, and we saw this going back to last year when Mike Evans and Godwin were both off the field. like and saw a significant role increase. This year they've had like Buka to lean on, sure. Buka, not 100%, obviously, and they still don't have Godwin, they still don't have Bucky Irvin, they still don't have Mike Evans. So I think that, like we saw last week, Baker Mayfield likes to lean on KI, and I don't think that changes this week. I think he's very, very much a play, and I think again, like he is someone that is just too cheap for what his expected role is going to be. I'm going to keep an eye on Dalton Schultz. You mentioned the opportunities. He's had at least 6 targets in 4 consecutive games. Potentially no Nico Collins here with 2 rookie wide receivers. Get the ball out of your hands quickly. CJ Stroud. Here's Dalton Schultz right in the middle of the field. I'm expecting a lot of volume here for him this week. And then kind of, look, 70% catch rate to tight ends. The San Francisco 49ers are giving up. So it's not like they're giving a pretty high percentage catch rate there. The one other guy, so like for me, look, it's either Kincaid and or one of those 2 guys I just talked about, like kind of where I'm at. But if you want to go contrarian, and then Goddard would only be in a Philadelphia Eagles stack is where I'm going to play Goddard. I'm not going to do a one-off on Goddard here. Um, I mentioned this earlier, and you're going to see what I'm like, kind of the trend I'm going. Kyle Pitts. Why? Again, if you're trying to get different with your Bijan builds, he's another guy who I think can take advantage of the matchup against Miami, who's very vulnerable defensively. And you've seen Kyle Pitts has a pretty stable role here in this offense. They don't have to pass a ton. All you need for him is to get into that end zone here, and you're going to return value. When you look at his, the recent production here for Pitts, like he's coming off a game where he had 7 catches for 62 yards, best game, one of the better games of the season. He has at least 60 plus yards. He has 60 plus yards in 2 of his last 3 games. Has scored a touchdown in one of his last 3 games. Has at least 5 catches in 2 of his last 3. Like, there's pretty decent floor, good matchup if you're trying to get different. The only reason why I'm recommending him, if you're only running one lineup like me, probably not going to do this kind of stuff. But I did want to throw that out there because I wanted people to have options to get different with their Atlanta Falcons and Bijan Robinson shares this weekend, Chris. Anything else at the tight end position?
Nope.
Defense. I said I've had trouble scrolling all the way down and stopping somewhere. I've stopped in numerous places. I don't feel remotely good about any of these places. They're very, very disturbing waters that we're swimming in right now, Chris. But where are you at defensively? Because I'm gonna tell you right now, I landed on the Bengals, bro. Like, and I
So
don't
did I.
like it. I don't like it whatsoever. Kind of where I stopped. I stick to my stomach if we're being honest. But where are you at here with this defensive position that we're looking to play this weekend?
Defense sucks this week, but I stopped at the Giants.
Oh boy. Oh, you are worse off than I am.
I stopped at the Giants, then I stopped at the Browns.
I thought
But
about
let
the
me tell
Browns.
you why. Let me tell you why. I'm gonna let's. This is gonna see how many people really listen to your podcast because I'm gonna give a lineup right now. Okay, so we're gonna see how many people play this lineup, how many people listen to the podcast. Ready? Caleb Williams, Derrick Henry, Bijan Robinson, Jamar Chase, Roma Dunze, Cortland Sutton, Cade Otton, Dalton Schultz, and you could either go the Saints defense, the Jets defense, or you can go the Giants.
I would probably go the Giants there. Not Giants or Saints, but no, no. I'm telling you, man, for me, it's a tough week, man. Like I landed on the Bengals because of 2 things. Like number one, it's the Jets, right? And then number
Yep.
two, they're not going to have Wilson. Like they're one dimensional.
Yep.
They're really one dimensional this weekend. Like I don't expect Tyrod Taylor to go out there and set the world on fire this weekend, man. And then not only that, you got to look at, um, Mason Taylor also dinged up with a quad injury. Like if they don't have Mason Taylor, they don't have
And that popped up
Wilson.
yesterday.
Correct. Like I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to sell anyone on the Bengals defense. I'm just giving you why I landed on them. I'm not happy about it. I'm going to continue to try my way to get out of there. But like like as you've seen, yes, there's value, but there's value, and we're trying to open up more because of what we want to pay up for this week. So it's very difficult to make a strong case to pay up for defense this week when it really is a shitty position this week. Um, you and I will talk about it on Sunday. I'm pretty sure by then we'll have more news and things like that. But right now, kind of where I'm at, man. Cincinnati Bengals, sick to my stomach, 2,700. That's where we're at. Um, Anything else, Chris? Like if you had to choose a defense, right? Like let's say Price was it, like I would probably be in on the Patriots against the Browns. That's kind of where I would be at. Or even the Falcons against Miami. I feel like that's good. I feel like the Falcons is probably going to be a popular one because everyone's going to correlate that with Bijan. So, but I think that's where I would be at this weekend if I had to choose one here from scratch. Where would you go if you had to choose one with no price?
Probably
Yeah.
the Falcons.
All right, Chris, you know the drill. Let's move on and give some survivor pool picks for the week. I think there's obvious picks with some heavy favorites here this week. I think the Colts are an obvious pick. I think the Chiefs against the this Commanders team going down to their backup quarterback there. I think they're in play. But my favorite one is it's going to be Falcons against Miami. That's kind of where I'm at here. But pretty much targeting Miami for I mentioned it last week where I thought the Browns were a risky pool play. If you wanted to use them, they were a bit risky given how bad they are too, but it was Miami. They ended up returning value for us there if you picked them. But where are you at this week?
Yeah, mine's Buffalo. Kind of bouncing back here against Carolina. I think they win handily. I think it's kind of the safer spot.
I like that call a lot. I think Buffalo needs to win this game, like you mentioned there. Fresh out of the bye, I expect them to do so with ease in Carolina. All right, Chris, we do it every week, and I bounced back last week, right? So it's we're getting better the last couple of weeks. We're now officially 3-5 on the season. We got the Colts plus 1.5 last week. That hit for us. Um, I got another one. I got another team I'm liking. I got a road team that's getting 2 points right now that I'm in on, and that's the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Houston. They're getting 2 points there. I like it. I like San Francisco on the road getting those points. I think they could go out and outright win this game. My big concern with Houston, man, is I love CJ Stroud. I don't think it's all on him. I think that offensive line is a complete shit show. I still think the future is bright for CJ Stroud, but I do think they need to protect this young man right now in Houston because he just seems under stressed every single time he drops back to pass the ball. Where are you at here? What do you got cooking this week, Chris?
Yeah, so we have the college football live stream tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Finishing up my DK article for the college football slate 7 p.m. Tomorrow, and then of course, gonna go through my NFL GPP article, which I'll submit this evening, ready to go for tomorrow.
And what bets you got cooking this week?
Oh, I thought you meant bets. I thought you meant what's cooking as far as going on. I like a couple things I like. Number one being I do like Atlanta at 7.5 favorites at home. I like Denver at home at -3.5. And I do like Indy to cover even at 14.5.
Ooh, wow. 14.5 to cover. That's
I
a
do
lot.
think they cover it. I do think they cover it.
That's a lot. You know what's good tease?
That's a 31-7 win.
You could tease that, by the way. You could tease that down
You could
and
tease
get
it going to 14.
you what you could do is tease that spread down to what 7 and then get points, get more points with San Fran who's getting points on the road. Or maybe not 7, but maybe like what 10, 8.5. Like
I think San Fran at plus money is a fucking
well that's my bet for the week.
yeah
Like I like
yeah.
San
I didn't
Fran.
want to.
I like San Fran getting the points on the road this week.
Yeah.
But I like the idea of if you really like that, like teasing, um, they're they're teasing that game, and then with getting more points for San Francisco, I think that's a good parlay there, Chris. They already heard what you got cooking. You and I will be on Sunday at noon Eastern time. We'll be on the live stream there over at fantasyguru.com. We'll be going game by game there. We'll have updated news, all of the injury reports. For the most part, we're going to have the inactives and actives for most, if not all of those games, especially those 1 p.m. games by the time we go live. So make sure you're tuning in. Of course, you can find all of my work over at fantasyguru.com. You can catch me on the Twitter machine at Armando_Marsal, as well as on Instagram and threads at Mind of Marsal, and then now on TikTok at Mind of Marsal Pod. Remember, folks, if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the content, please make sure you follow, rate, review, and like the content wherever it is you're listening to the podcast. For the great Chris Rose, I'm Armando Marsal. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's journey through the mind of Marsal. Until next time.